Hello everybody, it's your friendly digital technology librarian, Christy here. We have reached another Friday, so shocker, I have another Film Rec Friday ready for everybody out there. Um, as of September 15th, we just started Hispanic Heritage Month, and of course I wanted to put together a list of films and documentaries celebrating Hispanic and Latinx history, culture, all of that. But before I dive into those things, I really want to sort of go over a brief kind of history of Hispanic Heritage Month. Now, the month initially started as a single week in 1968 under Lyndon B. Johnson. It was later expanded into a full month in 1988 under Ronald Reagan, and we've been celebrating it as such ever since. Um, if you were curious as to why Hispanic Heritage Month starts in the middle of September rather than at the beginning of the month, like most of our celebratory months do, it's actually very specifically thought out to cover some really historic moments in Hispanic history. By starting September 15th and running all the way through October 15th, it actually covers the anniversary of independence for 5 Latinx countries, those being Costa Rica, Guatemala, El Salvador, Nicaragua, and Honduras. Those all declared independence in 1821. Now, by running between 2 months, it also coincides with other national independence days like Mexico on September 16th, Chile on September 18th, Belize on September 21st, and Puerto Rico on September 23rd. So you have a ton of history packed into just that handful of weeks. So you can see why it was very much a thought out process to put Hispanic Heritage Month between the two. Now, I have put together a list of award-winning, critically acclaimed movies and documentaries, and I think you'll probably be able to find something that speaks to you within those. I tried to do a little bit of a broad swath with tone, but if you can't, make sure you check out our 3 video services, which are CleveNet's Overdrive, Hoopla Digital, and Canopy. There are literally thousands and thousands of videos on there. You will 100% be able to find something that you're interested in. All of those options, of course, are available entirely for free with the use of your Milan-Berlin Library Card. And so with that, I am going to jump right into the Rex. My first pick of the week is from CleveNet's Overdrive, and it's for the holiday title, Nothing Like the Holidays. Now, if you like holiday films that deal with families, if you enjoy the dramatic encounters between family members, if you enjoy a ton of ridiculous humor, Nothing Like the Holidays is an absolute must-watch. It definitely needs to go on your list. It follows the Rodriguez family. They live in Chicago, and this particular year they're celebrating the return of their youngest son from the military. Um, like most family get-togethers, there's a ton of drama going on, but it's also blended with some pretty outrageous humorous moments. This is entirely due to both the writing and the phenomenal casting. It's like a who's who list of performers. You have John Leguizamo playing Mauricio, who's the eldest brother of the family. He's married to Sarah, played by Deborah Messing. They're a very professional couple. He's a lawyer, she's a financier. You know, they have, I hesitate to use the word yuppie, but that's kind of what it feels like, a very specific lifestyle. They don't have any kids at this point in the film, and it's definitely a point of contention between the couple and his family. His mother is played by Elizabeth Pena. His father is played by Alfred Molina. I love Alfred Molina. He's such an incredible actor. Jesse, the youngest brother who's returning from the military, is played by Freddie Rodriguez. I mean, it's a ludicrous cast, and every single person is amazing. You have Luis Guzman playing a ridiculous cousin, so funny. He doesn't even have that many lines, but every time he speaks, it's just funny. He's one of those actors I always enjoy seeing, no matter what kind of role he's playing. If he's playing, a friendly neighborhood cousin, if he's playing this hardcore villain, it doesn't matter. He's really phenomenal at playing both sides of the coin. You have, a story that will 100% tug at your heart, but you also have elements that will have you laughing out loud. I mean, it's sort of the perfect kind of family holiday dramedy. It really is. If you enjoy movies like The Family Stone, I would say this is very much a similar vibes. Different storylines, of course, they're dealing with different issues, but it still has that same feel where, family can overcome anything kind of concept, which is a very warm and fuzzy holiday spirit kind of thing. So if you are interested in a movie that celebrates family as a whole, but also like focuses in periodically from family member to family member and explores all those little intricate day-to-day kind of frustrations and celebrations, definitely check out Nothing Like the Holidays. It's available on CleveNet's Overdrive, but it's also available on Hoopla Digital, I believe. So just depending on your preferred platform, it's there and absolutely worth the watch. My next recommendation is for a Hoopla digital title, and it's the historical biopic In the Time of Butterflies. Now, In the Time of Butterflies tells the real-life story of the Maribal sisters, who were these trio of young women who were revolutionaries during the time of Rafael Trujillo, who was the dictator of the Dominican Republic from the 1930s through the early 60s, I want to say. Now, I don't think that it's a spoiler to tell you up front that Trujillo was responsible for having the Mirabal sisters assassinated. Like many dictators, he was pretty fierce with his retaliation against people who opposed him. So again, it's a part of history. It's not a spoiler. But what this film does is it really traces the roots of the relationship between those sisters and Trujillo. And I think it does quite a good job of being both suspenseful and informative at the same time. Of course, you're going to have creative license. Like, no film like this is ever going to be like 100% cut and dried, but I think it gets the feeling across very well while still staying fairly true to the storyline. And also not being so cut and dried as to be boring at any point. It's never boring. The film focuses on Minerva Mirabal, who is played by Salma Hayek, who has, of course, a really interesting arc where she goes from being young and idealistic to the state that she's in by the end of the movie, with a real focus regarding revolution. And I think Hayek does a phenomenal job playing that arc. You see her going from essentially a young innocent to someone who has, while losing that naivete, never really lost sight of what she believes an ideal Dominican Republic would be. And you get a similar arc for the other two sisters, but nothing as fleshed out as Minerva's lifeline. It's based on a highly acclaimed novel by Julia Alvarez, and there are some shifts from the present day within the film to the past, and I don't think at any point it gets confusing, but if there was a moment within the film where things get kind of clunky. I would say it's the transitions between those scenes. Um, I still think the scenes of the past are absolutely necessary to sort of flesh out the arcs that I was talking about, because that's when you really see like the young, sweet, innocent, um, I guess, isolated vision of, when you're a kid, you really just see the world directly around you and you don't necessarily think or feel about the bigger picture. And I do think that those elements are absolutely necessary to the storyline. I think they could have probably been handled with a little more finesse, but still absolutely integral to the story. And the lack of finesse does not take away the value of the movie. Um, Edward James Olmos, who is a fantastic actor. If you've not seen Battlestar Galactica, you absolutely need to. He plays one of the main characters. He is my favorite, bar none. Anyway, he plays Rafael Trujillo, and he does a phenomenal job of not mustache twirling, if that makes any sense at all. This is dictators in general. I feel if you're going to have a mustache twirling villain, it very easily could be pick your name and history. Dictators are where they are for a reason, right? But almost plays him with a nuance that, while you never sympathize, you definitely understand how he got to where he is. How, like, he has this ice cold center and he will do what he needs to do to stay in his position. It's not about anger, it's not about vengeance, it's about power, and he plays that so perfectly well. It's a very dark character, but he does it so that it still manages to have a fullness about it. It definitely feels like a three-dimensional character rather than just this flat, evil, power-hungry creation. And I think that's his performance in particular is what makes the film so compelling, because you have this fully fleshed out villain constantly lurking, constantly lying in wait to destroy these women. And it's just one of those movies that, even if you know how it ends, obviously it's part of history, we know what happens to the Mirabal sisters, but you're always on the edge of your seat wondering what's going to happen next. How is it going to be played out on the screen? It's one of those movies that I don't know that I'll watch it repeatedly. It's not one that is fun by any means, but I do think it's an excellent film, and I do think it gives you this slice of history that is important to know about, that maybe is a story that we don't have a particular familiarity with. So in that regard, I absolutely recommend In the Time of Butterflies. Really, really solid performances, particularly from Hayek and from Olmos, and totally worth the watch. So available on Hoopla, In the Time of Butterflies. All right, my next recommendation is also from Hoopla Digital, and that is for the film Raising Victor Vargas. Raising Victor Vargas has been on my to be watched list for years and years and years. I just never got around to watching it for some reason, and I am so glad that I finally did. This film is a phenomenal coming of age tale. Coming of age tales come in every size, shape, and form. They are just a part of filmmaking in general. A lot of times it can feel like if you've seen one, you've seen them all. But there's something really, really authentic feeling about this movie. I don't know if it's specifically the acting, which is excellent, by the way, or the writing, but everything comes together in a way that makes you absolutely feel connected to all of the characters, not just the young man playing Victor Vargas, but to all the people who are even peripherally involved in his life. It feels very honest. Now, Victor is, I think, a very typical teenage dude. He postures constantly. He's kind of obsessed with the idea of being perceived as this player, who can get anyone he wants, who doesn't really have to make any effort, and the anyone he wants has to always be this sort of perfect vision of what everyone thinks is beautiful. And he ends up, what's the word, getting stuck in this sort of weird rumor mill where people are saying that he got involved with this girl who wasn't attractive at all, which it's just this hot mess of ridiculous teenage um, bullying, and it's it's something that 100% could happen anywhere, to almost anybody, and I think that's part of what pulled me in so quickly to the movie, is that situation. 100%, it doesn't matter what your cultural background is, it doesn't matter where you are in the country, that situation, it has been around forever. And yet again, it doesn't feel rote, it feels very, very rooted in truth. So you have Victor, and he's desperate to get kind of out of this rumor cycle that he's currently in. So he decides to get with like the hottest girl in town, who has her own set of issues. She has problems with guys constantly trying to take advantage. There's just a lot. There's a lot of backstory for her. But they eventually manage to spend enough time together that they sort of build this relationship. And, Victor seems to actually develop legitimate feelings. Like, not even romantic feelings per se. I mean, he does, but at the same time, it doesn't feel manufactured. It feels like everything else in his life, especially the relationships he has with his peers, platonic or romantic or otherwise, feels very much just a part of his perception cycle, his attempt to be this big man on campus, even though he's not a college kid yet or anything. His attempt at posturing, being this big guy. And so the fact that the relationship between Victor and this young woman seems so real for the first time, I think that's really both touching and, again, another grounding element of the storyline. There is a side story that between another young couple that I actually found just as charming and compelling as the primary storyline, and I think when you have a secondary couple that is just as compelling as your primary, that's the mark of really, really phenomenal writing, because it shows that the writer understands that there are always other stories going on, and it shows that world building ability, where, every single person within this world that the writer has created, every single person has their own life, and it's just as full as this primary couple. And I just really love when that happens, whether it's in a film, whether it's in some uh, television show or an East Asian drama. It doesn't matter. I always love when I'm just as invested in that secondary pairing. Anyway, um, as Victor and Judy's relationship sort of develops, other elements from both of their backstories come to the forefront. There's plenty of family drama going on as well, which further fleshes out the film and each character's storyline. It's just altogether a really good, solid coming of age film. Take the coming of age part out of it. It's just a really good movie about a pair of young people trying to figure out life. And I think you will get caught up in their stories no matter what. It doesn't matter if you're 20 or if you're 40. It's still going to be an interesting story. So make sure you check out Raising Victor Vargas. Absolutely excellent acting and really, really good writing. Totally worth the time. Okay, moving right along to my next recommendation. This one is available on Canopy and is for a two-part documentary called The Graduates. Now, The Graduates is from PBS and it is an excellent, excellent doc. I mean, I love the format. It takes a trio of young men and a trio of young women who are on the verge of graduating from high school, and it just gives us a snapshot of their lives. All of them are incredibly different, coming from thoroughly different backgrounds, but they all have this commonality between them of graduation, this jumping point off into adulthood. Now, each of these children are really, really fascinating people. Within the boys, you have Juan, who is Dominican. He's living in Lawrence, Massachusetts. He was bullied as a teen for being gay. He's struggling to really find his identity when we meet him in the documentary, but he loves performance. He loves writing. He really wants to figure out how he can make those elements a part of his adult life, and how by expressing his experiences he can really face the challenges he's already had to face and make them a part of a bigger picture, a bigger story for everyone. You've got Eduardo from San Diego. He was one of those kids who was about to become a part of a gang. He had been, clearly close to gang culture for a big part of his youth, and then is introduced to a college prep organization that manages to help him pull away from that life. And he talks about how it would have been so easy for him to just fall into that path. Like, he was already on it. He just could have kept that trajectory and kept moving. But just this one circumstance, having some people care, it turned so many things around. It really changed his perspective, and how that is going to inform everything that happens in his own future now. You've got Gustavo, who came to the U.S. from Mexico. He's in Georgia, and he would love to go to college, but he happens to have undocumented status. So what is he going to do now? Like, what trajectory is his life going to take? That's just the first part of the documentary. It just covers the three guys that you're going to meet. The young women include Stephanie. She's the daughter of Salvadorian immigrants, and she went to this super tough public school on the south side of Chicago. She is able to overcome a ton of distractions, is not a strong enough word. A lot of situations. There was serious violence going on in her school situation, and she manages to become this activist and volunteer before she's even done with high school. She is motivated and she's passionate, and she's just fascinating within this. You've got Chastity. She's from the Bronx, and her family, through circumstances, has managed to become homeless. So she's struggling with being homeless and still trying to make it through high school, and all of the challenges that's going to entail. You've got Darlene from Tulsa. She dropped out of school when she became pregnant as a teenager, but at the point in the documentary that we are, she's back in school. She's trying to get back into that flow, and she talks about how hard it is, how difficult it is to have this tiny human waiting for you back home, and to go back and be a teenager for a handful of hours every day. How she does that and how she balances all the things that she has to balance now. I mean, this could easily be one of those documentaries that kind of glosses over the hardest parts of each kid's story. It doesn't, though. It gets into the nitty gritty of things. Like, it doesn't shy away from talking about when these kids made bad decisions, and some of them made very bad decisions. And it's not that anyone is proud of them. No one is like, yeah, I did this, and there's no posturing about it. But there's this acceptance. All of them see what challenges they faced, and it's very clear that they have moved past those, and that they are comfortable enough talking about them because they've moved past those elements and those pieces of history. um, I love documentaries that like this, that seem super duper small, super duper focused in. I mean, it covers 6 people and that's it. But at the same time, the story is so universal. Like, youth moving into adulthood. That's, again, a universal theme. We were just talking about coming of age stories. Everybody deals with something when they're coming from being a teenager to an adult. Everybody deals with pressures of graduation, whether they are peer based, parentally based. It really makes the commonalities come to the forefront, rather than all of the different intricate elements that are going to be super specific to each of these kids. And I think that's the magic of these small documentaries, is that it's more about the common nature of life and existence than anything else. So if you're looking for something super moving that has really full stories, check out The Graduates. It's such a good documentary. I cannot recommend it enough. It's just really, really, really well done. There are moments when it feels more like a movie than a documentary, simply because each kid has such a full story. So yes, available on Canopy, The Graduates. You won't regret it. All right, my final recommendation for this week is from Canopy, and it is for the movie Bad Hair, Pelo, Malo. This is a 2014 Venezuelan drama. It was written and directed by Mariana Rondon. And this, I hesitate to use the word favorite, because I don't know that this can be a favorite movie, but it was definitely the movie I thought about the most after I watched it this week. And I watched a ton of movies prepping for this, a ton of them. A lot of which didn't make my list just because I don't have the time to talk about 20, 25 films. But this one, I don't know, there's something about it that I just kept thinking about it and thinking about it. It tackles some really hard themes. It is a challenging movie. It covers racism. It covers like historic cultural racism. It covers homophobia. There's just so much going on in every single scene. And I there were moments when watching it where my stomach was in knots. I felt so much. I just felt so much while watching this movie. It's incredibly acted, especially the young man who plays the primary character of Junior. He's 9 years old. He, from the get-go, is subject to his own internalized and external racism. He has this weird obsession with his hair. He has what they refer to offensively as pelo malo, bad hair, like I was saying earlier. And it's considered bad hair because it's so tightly curly. This is, of course, historically due to a lot of mixed race within the Venezuelan people. He's obsessed with straightening his hair. He has to have straight hair because straight hair is beautiful. Straight hair is the right hair. There's just so much to unpack in that alone. I mean, one, it's the film's title, so you know what you're getting from the get-go. But it's so hard to watch this young man play this emotion on screen. And And it's so matter of fact for this kid. Like, it's just like, I want to straighten my hair. I love straight hair. Straight hair is good hair. Hearing someone so young feel that way, I mean, you've definitely been indoctrinated to feel that way. And it's so sad. Like that idea is so incredibly sad that you could be that young and already feel that outside of what is acceptable. Um, so you have this young man who is desperate for straight hair, and this sort of obsession with his own hair spurs this internalized homophobia to becoming externalized homophobia in his mother, who feels that his obsession must mean that he's gay, which of course is thoroughly unacceptable to her. There's just a lot again to unpack in every single scene, and it's always something. Despite that sort of always something in every scene, it never feels like some story of the week. You don't feel preached to. You feel like you're just seeing through, a fourth wall. You're just seeing this kid's life. It's not telling you that these things are bad. It's not telling you that this situation is awful. It's just showing what his daily life is. And there, it's not just those harsh, awful moments. You see him interacting with other kids, his close friend. I mean, and he has a terrible sense of humor. Like, he can be so savage when he talks to her, like so savage. Um, but it comes off in this way that's just so matter of fact at the same time that you kind of find yourself laughing at moments. Like, you absolutely shouldn't. Like, some of the things he says are pretty terrible things, but they're also really funny. He's just so deadpan about it. So again, this kid's acting is spot on. I mean, he just plays Junior so well. Anyway, you have this kid who, you know, is falling into all of these awful situations because his mother is so adamant about him not being gay. There's a lot that he has to deal with from that. And he also just is a regular kid. He wants to have fun. He wants to be happy. He has a really beautiful relationship with his grandmother, and you know, I loved watching them interact. Any moments that we had with the two of them are really, really fascinating and beautiful. And it every time you see that, you feel like this weight has been lifted off your shoulders, which is definitely the weight that Junior feels lifting off of his shoulders. It puts us in that position. We can finally breathe. We don't have to worry what Marta, Junior's mother, is going to do next, what she's going to figure out to make sure that her kid doesn't become what she doesn't want him to become. You know, it again, this is just one of those really challenging films that I don't know how soon I'll rewatch it. I don't know if I will rewatch it, but I'm so glad that I saw it. I just still, like I said, periodically think about a scene or think about a character's reaction to things, and I think that's the mark of a really, really phenomenally done film, is that it will stay with you. It will stay with you, or it's already stayed with me for the better part of a couple weeks. So, and I've watched tons of movies since then. Like, I've watched so many movies, I'm telling you. um and I think that this one is really, really worth adding to your to be watched list. So again, available on Canopy, Bad Hair, Pelo, Malo. My pick of the week. You absolutely need to add it to your list. Okay, so those are all of my picks for this week. As always, thank you so much for joining me. If you have any recommendations for films that discuss or explore Hispanic and Latinx culture, history, anything, please comment, let us know, share those films. I would love to watch more movies that other people have enjoyed. If, of course, you have any recommendations for future themes, make sure you comment with those as well. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and sign off. As always, thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you next week. Bye bye.